Peace, peace, peace. Ladies, gentlemen, guys, earths, what's good? Like we usually do around this time, you might notice that there's 5 people here. Usually 4, but we have 5 people. We'll get into that right after the intro. But like we usually do around this time, it's survey time. Offline, we're talking about UWF, the Urban Wrestling Federation. So the survey question to go around the ring is, who was the first UWF World Champion? Wrong answers only. I'm going to go with Big Baby Jesus, old dirty bastard himself.
I got Hip Hop Harry. Who's next?
Oh man, Gangstalicious from the Boondocks.
Jackie Moon.
Jackie
Moon. Gangsters everybody.
Chad, what it do?
Gotta be John.
Did he just say John Moxley?
You said John Moxley?
That is exactly what I said. I said John Moxley.
Why not? It makes sense because it doesn't make sense. We'll get it started. It's the Ringside Club. You heard?
Peace to the gods, the Ringside Club Pod. My name is A.O. Say you heard around the Don. Blame Boogie while you at it. Blame Chad Law. K-Fabe is dead. Break the fourth wall. Whatever style, whether it's lucha or strong style. Come through the beam, we fly. Burn the bar down. Back to the pad, chop it up for the pod. Ringside Club, intro to the squad as the show starts.
Peace, 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 peace. Ladies and gentlemen, you are tuned in to the mightiest of the mighty, the RSC, the Ringside Club, broadcasting from the Empire Tri-State. We have a special guest in the building, but before we introduce our guest, let's do what we usually do. All social media platforms, we're at the Ringside Club, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. You can subscribe. The video, of course, is on YouTube. The audio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, things of that nature. Make sure you tell a friend that the ringsideclub.com is where you need to go for all your needs. Now, of course, my name. I'm going to pass it to the guy around the down. What's good, baby?
Yes,
Hey, who are you? Let me introduce you to the other Don. Don.
Yes, sir. You already know it's Ron the Don, and you. Pardon me. Ooh,
Pardon you.
Ron the Don, and you can find me everywhere at Ron Don PMF. You already see the coffee, see the hats. You already know. What's good, bug?
Boom, 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 boom.
Look what you did.
I don't know why every week I forget that my drop's gonna hit, but it hits. So there it is. You know, it's your Ringside Club pay-per-view predictions champion, the Big Belt. My name is Blame Boogie, and you could catch me at blameboogie.com. And that's the only place you could catch me because I'm always with my wife and son. Other than that, I'm going to kick it over to my fellas down there in the bottom row.
Adrenaline in my soul.
What up, though? What up, though? What up, though? What up, though? It's the Kid Younger Dive himself, CHADLAW. You already know right now. 2-time Ringside Club predictions champion. 2-time Ringside Club television champion. You know what I'm saying? The Miz of the RSC is here to let you guys know that he is awesome. And as you guys know, I'm on the road. I'm always on go. But this March is going to be a busy one for us. Go to the Ringside Club website, cop the merchandise, cop the blog pieces that we be putting up. You see all the law takes. Make sure you guys share, subscribe, like, tell a friend to tell a friend. Pass it over to the homie right now. Pete, what's good, man?
What's good, Ringside Club? Thank you for having me.
Had to hit you with a year. No year shall go unanswered.
And a big shout out to my co-host at the Your Sports Show as well. Please follow us at Your Sports Show on all social media platforms. And of course, follow We Are Wrestling on all social media podcasts. I am beyond blessed to be on with y'all today, but even more so to have the one, the only Ringside Club back again as sponsors for We Are Wrestling next Friday night. March 10th, there can only be one. The night we crown the first We Are Wrestling Grand Champion.
It's pretty poetic, right? Because your show, Welcome to the Bronx, last November was the first show that we sponsored, and you are now our first guest on the podcast. So it's fire.
Full
That's
circle.
fire. Full circle.
Wyndham
Full
6.
circle.
We appreciate you just as much as you appreciate us, my man. Absolutely.
It is, listen, I'm very heavy on the we, right? We Are Wrestling is not just a name. It is a truly deeply held belief, right? This is something where it's about the community. It's about all of us that are wrestling fans. That is all I was growing up, is a wrestling fan. Even to this day, 10 years in the wrestling business, I am still very much a wrestling fan. And I want We Are Wrestling to really encompass all of us who sat around, looking at wrestling and be like, man, I wish there was something like that here next to me that I could go see. Those of us who couldn't afford to go to MSG, couldn't afford to go to the Hammerstein, who couldn't afford to go to all those places and watch all the shows that we wanted to watch. That's why I do what I do with We Are Wrestling, man.
Fire. Definitely want to get into the origin story, how you got into wrestling for sure. But just in case you didn't hear the first time, March 10th, We Are Wrestling presents There Can Only Be One. It's in the Bronx. It's also streaming on the Title Match Network. If you want tickets, to at wearewrestling.eventbrite.com. Make sure you cop before they're sold out. Before we get to that show, though, let's talk a little bit about that Welcome to the Bronx show. Like I mentioned, that was the first time that we sponsored. I may have this wrong. Was that the first show that you guys had in the Bronx, or in the Bronx for some time, right?
Yeah, so it was the first show that we did in the Bronx. It was our fourth show overall. Our first three shows happened in Ridgefield Park, New Jersey. And then I wanted to come home. And I had worked in that venue, St. Helena's Church, before. A couple of years prior, I was working for a company called Bree Combination Wrestling, BCW. Back when I was doing a lot of the creative stuff over there. And in my non-Batman time, I'm a middle school teacher, and I've been a middle school teacher for about 10 years, about as long as I've been in wrestling, 10 years. And so I had actually taught at that school, and was able to bring some wrestling there. But Welcome to the Bronx was our first time back in the Bronx, and it was the first wrestling event in the Bronx in over 3 years. The last time there had been a wrestling show in the Bronx was before the pandemic, called a company called BWF, the Bronx Wrestling Federation, was ran out of a gym, out of an old school iron gym in the South Bronx. They ran shows the same Friday every month, once a month, and that was it. You had a couple of pop-up shows.
Bronx Wrestling Federation sounds like Bronx Wrestling Federation sounds like something you'd see on like a television show. The Bronx Wrestling Federation.
I'm surprised they didn't get a deal to be on BronxNet, if I'm gonna be very honest with you.
Are they still running now?
No, they are no longer. They are a defunct organization now. Actually, the founder of that organization was in the Rumble, Bronco International.
Okay,
yeah, he was actually in the Rumble. That was my little homage to him. Thank you so much. He gave me a shot at BWF. That's where I learned. That's where I was in the ring, and I trained for a little while under the people that were there. And a lot of the guys and girls that made Bronx wrestling what it is, or at least what it was at that time, are a part of, We Are Wrestling. Montekia, Mr. James. You'll see, on last year, you saw Bronco International, Karen Bam Bam. I remember when she started training, and to give her an opportunity to have a shot in the Bronx after all this time, she's made her name. So many people who made the Bronx what it was. Johnny Santos, Big Cuzzo, the names go on and on. I wanted to bring them in and give them that shot in the Bronx, especially the guy who won that Rumble, Matt Awesome.
Yeah, that was the match that we sponsored. We also sponsored Darius Carter, Mike Bailey. But I remember like the response that Matt Awesome got from the crowd. Jay Bougie as well. I think he's another dude from the Bronx sponsoring on this upcoming show. But those two guys specifically, I remember just like the love that they got from the crowd. You know what I mean? It just felt like a homecoming for sure.
Yeah, and Bougie definitely the next generation of Bronx wrestling. Right, that next generation. Bougie kind of got in around after the Bronx wrestling scene had kind of died a little bit. Matt Awesome was kind of like that crop right before. But yeah, those two guys, definitely the future. Jarrett Diaz as well. In fact, that was a huge homecoming for Jarrett Diaz because he actually went to St. Helena's as a child. He actually attended school in that building. So he was, as a child in elementary school, running around in that gymnasium. and then to be able to wrestle in that same place in front of your family and friends, it's incredible.
Fire. All right, let's talk origin stories. Let's talk favorite wrestlers. Let's talk, how did you get attracted to pro wrestling in the first place? Who are your favorite wrestlers? This is a weird world for people to be in the first place. So how did you get attracted to it?
My mom. My mom, when I was a kid, would watch wrestling. My mother was a huge fan of The Undertaker. And so I was born right around when The Undertaker debuted. In fact, the first wrestling event that I watched without knowing I was watching it was WrestleMania 2. And then I had that on VHS. My grandfather had it recorded. And then my dad would record the wrestling pay-per-views every time they would come on, and I'd watch, whether it was WCW or WWF, WWE, I would be watching that. And obviously I was one of those kids that switched between Nitro and Raw, Nitro and Raw, Nitro and Raw. In fact, one time, I think I was about like 5 or 6 years old, a friend of my mother's got into a car accident. We were in the car as well, minor car accident. I was in the hospital. My mother was in the hospital. She came to my room and she wanted to know how I was, and she couldn't find a nurse. So she looked in the window and she saw me, and I was watching wrestling on the hospital TV, doing the bushwhackers. And she's like, he's fine. He's all right. We're good. Fast forward so many years later, I wanted to become a wrestler. I wanted to, be in the ring. Just like I think any young kid who wanted to be in wrestling wanted to actually be in the ring. But unfortunately, life got in the way of that. I did get in the ring. I did train. I did spend some time in a ring and doing the things that need to get done. But between being a college graduate, going back to school, having a full-time job, it didn't work out. And so I wanted to find other ways to make a name for myself in the wrestling business. And my initial dream in college was to be a sports radio broadcaster. I wanted to work for ESPN, and I said, you know what? Hey, I can manage. I can do commentary. I can do this. And, 10 years later, I've managed. I've done ring announcing. I've done commentary, which is kind of my bread and butter. That's my thing. And then I found a way to be a little bit more on the creative side and work backstage, and launched We Are Wrestling in 2021. And in fact, the company is dedicated to my mother for multiple reasons, but most notably, my mother passed away 9 days before our first show.
Shout out to your mom and rest in peace. That's a fire story.
Absolutely.
You have a
God bless.
people
God bless
say
the
you have
family.
a what's the backstory or whatever, like your character story or whatever, like character arc or whatever. It's dope to have that behind this. It's just dope.
Yeah, man. We Are Wrestling is like everything that I've learned in all my different spots in wrestling and all my different stops. Everybody that I've ever learned from, I've taken something from it and brought it into this. I actually was showing my girlfriend a couple weeks ago. I found the piece of paper that I wrote the first card where I was like, if I did my own show, like this is who I would book. And like my main event was like MJF versus, I forget who it was at the time that I had him going up against, because I'd known MJF when he was training at Creative Pro here in Long Island. So like I was around for guys like Joe Gacy, guys like MJF, Anthony Bowens, Max Caster, Chris Statlander. The list goes on and on. All these people. Like I remember when they were starting out and they were training, and I would be running in the same buildings as them, doing commentary on shows they were on. And then I ran my own. So it was just so fulfilling to be able to do that. And where we are in the Bronx is even more special for me, because not only did I work there, not only am I from the Bronx, born and raised, but my mother, for the last close to 20 years of her life, worked at a doctor's office less than 10 blocks away from that school in the Parkchester area of the Bronx. And so the school that we run out of is in between Parkchester and Castle Hill. And so when I was working there for the year that I taught there, it was really awesome because I would leave work, go pick up my mom from work, drive home together and things like that. So every time I'm in that building, I feel very connected to my mom. Which you guys saw and the world will see next Friday, our championship title. There is little homages to my mom in that championship and a lot of what we do. I always ask myself, I was like, if my mom saw this, would she pop? If I think I could pop my mom, then I'm happy.
And the belt is beautiful. You don't have to take our word for it. You'll see it soon, but it's very nice.
Yes, sir.
I'm hoping you have a replica on your wall soon.
Hell yeah.
What's it like
so-
to run the ropes on a consistent basis?
Back when I was doing, your back kind of hardens up against it when you're doing it consistently. So back when I was in the ring and actually training, it sucks at first. Like if I got into a ring now and started running the ropes, like not only would I be like tired and winded because my cardio is like terrible, but like they freaking hurt. Like people don't realize bumping sucks, but you get used to bumping. Like I could walk into a ring right now and bump. I'd be happy to bump. Like I want to bump more than I want to run the ropes half the time. Because running the ropes is terrible.
Depending on your height, I'm sure it like would hit you right where that first fat roll would grow right there on your back. And
that too, but also the top of your back. That top rope where it hits across the top of your back, right on your shoulder blades, and it digs in, and you end up leaving training. I remember when I used to leave training, I don't have no bruises. I'm tired, but I turn around in my bathroom, and you see the ropes imprinted on your back in red welts.
Yeah, that's respect. I can honestly, as a 30, well, about to be 38 next week, as a 37-year-old man, I've always wanted to wrestle, and you never like take into account that part of it. But goddamn, just hearing you say that, I'm good, bro.
Because people think they're bungee cords.
Right.
They're not. They're the real ropes. If you actually get real, like you either have rope, like a lot of old places have rope. But most of the places, it's airplane cable.
Yeah.
It's airplane cable wrapped
in electrical
up.
Tape.
Yeah. So that it's not. Listen, the ring is not a trampoline. The ropes are not bungee cords. It isn't all fun and games. Your body gets built up to it, but that's why you see a lot of these entertainers and a lot of these athletes when they come back. They talk about there's a difference between being injured. Edge talked about this when he talked about coming back for the Royal Rumble, and even when he talked about coming back for some of the matches that he's had where he's taken some time off. Edge is probably one of the most in-shape people you're going to meet.
Yeah.
But there is a difference between being in shape and being in ring shape. Because there is nothing like ring shape.
Is a real thing then, obviously.
Oh, yeah. You don't forget the things. Like a lot of it is like riding a bike, but it's that initial feeling when it's like you get in a ring and you bump again, or you get in a ring. Like Bully Ray said this one time, and obviously he was talking about more of like what his character lends to an independent promotion. And he talked about, if I'm going to go wrestle somebody for an independent promotion, I'm only bumping once. And part of it is because it's like, I'm done. I don't want to bump anymore. I don't want to do that.
Right.
But a lot of it was more to like who Bully Ray is and what does it mean for him to bump for you. Cody Rhodes talked about this when he talked about his first Rumble and Undertaker selling on the drop kick and the Undertaker bumping for him. And he was just like, wait a minute, what? Like you just bumped for me?
Right.
Like that's respect. Because you don't have to.
Him being there is the bump. He's like the draw, so to speak. So it's like he doesn't really have to do that. But when he does it, it's like, holy shit, this guy just
right.
For me.
But at the same time, like you come back and you bump. Jesus, like you take some time off the ring. Like don't get me wrong, I'll get into a ring and I'll go and put like probably the night of my show, if things are taken care of and I'm not running around crazy, before the crowd comes in and stuff, I always like to get in the ring and I like to bump in the ring real quick. But after about like 2 or 3 bumps, I'm like, all right, I need to rest. It's been a while.
What was your finishing move? What was your
What was
finishing
what?
move?
I didn't have one. I didn't have one yet. I didn't
make it that
yet.
far? All right.
No, I didn't make it that far. And the funny thing is, Al Snow would tell you, even if I did have a finisher, it's not my finisher. You don't have a finisher until you've beaten 50 people with it.
Fire.
Peace to Al Snow. That makes a lot of sense.
It's not your finisher until you've beaten 50 people with it. It's not your finisher until somebody else could tell a fan could say that's when you look when Jake goes for that DDT and he teases the DDT, that's it, because he's programmed you to understand that, right?
He's programmed us out of that hard too. Like the modern day wrestling it seems to have programmed us out of that setup. the Rock kicking the leg over and pulling the armband off. It's just not happening like that no more. You know,
the end of days is the most protected finisher in wrestling because I don't think anyone's kicked out of. I think that did change recently, but I think for a very long time, no one kicked out of the end of days. I don't know if that's still a running thing where no one's kicked out, but like when Corbin hits you at the end of days, that's it.
Right.
You lose.
Hey,
but for most other
sad.
people,
Roman.
What
I don't think I actually got to look that up because I remember they were talking about that.
He's on a losing streak
actually
now, so I feel
it's actually the number one. Here it goes. At WrestleMania 38, Drew McIntyre became the first person to kick out of the end of days finish.
Wow.
Damn.
So when you think about how long Corbin's been around and how long he's been using that finish, and it was Drew at Mania.
That's fire.
That's crazy.
Word.
All right, so like the ropes hurt. The ropes hurt. I remember the first time I saw like the wood, I saw an actual ring pulled up. So all that shit hurt. So commentary is definitely the move. So I'm gonna throw it to Ron. Ron, I got a question about commentary.
Yeah, man. So my question for you is, as being a commentator now, who influenced you to be a commentator, or who influenced you now to continue doing it? You know.
So my initial, I loved Bobby Heenan growing up. Mm-hmm. I loved Bobby and Gorilla. It's always, listen, Gordon Soley's great. There's so many great announcers from the territory days, and no disrespect to them, but Bobby and Gorilla are my template. That's always where I was, and that's where I am. I am a huge fan. Like, I could retire tomorrow if I got to sit down at a commentary table with Tony Schiavone. I pattern a lot of what I do after Schiavone, about Heenan. I love Mike Tenay. I actually think one of the best three-person booths that people don't talk about enough is Schiavone, Tenay, and Larry Zbyszko. That was
I would have
very
put Dusty there, but I feel you.
Yeah, but you know what it was? Dusty's always getting himself over. Like Dusty is bigger than the table. Zbyszko at that point in his career kind of faded away from a lot of people's minds as how good Zbyszko was. And so, you had Zbyszko really being the analyst. You had the color commentary as well with Tenay and analyst with Tenay. And Schiavone was just a great play-by-play guy. In the current roster, I mean, Kevin Kelly is always somebody that I've looked up to. Lenny Leonard, who was the commentator for Evolve and Shine, is absolutely fantastic. Dave Prazak, Mauro Ranallo, I've always loved them.
Love
Mauro
Ranallo too, man. It's one of
my
favorites.
you look at a lot of these different voices. That's where I get a lot of my announcing from, and then I also take from some sports announcing. So I was a huge wanting to be a sports broadcaster. So I have a lot of Stuart Scott in me, and that I like to try to bring those pop culture references into wrestling commentary.
R.I.P. Another great.
Yeah, and facts. So I like to do that a lot with I would always remember Stuart Scott's Cool Like the Other Side of the Pillow. So for me, like when you see a lot of these TikTok memes, these Instagram memes, these reels and things, sometimes I like to bring in a lot of them into wrestling commentary. So every indie commentator likes to do the JR. Oh my God, he's killed him. He's dead. Right? What do? I see a Walter chop, a Gunther chop, and I'm like, I hit him with the Semonio, and I pop, that for me is like, okay, how do I do it, but make it my own? Because you're never going to be Kevin Kelly. You're never going to be Schiavone and JR. You're not going to be those people. Too many people try to be those people in commentary. But how can you take what they did and how they inspired you and make it your own? Like a lot of people have heard me do commentary and they're like, yo, you're very Joey Styles-esque. And I'm like, well, yeah, because,
I can hear that. Yeah.
A lot of times it was, I did commentary by myself. So I did Joey. But now it's a little bit of like, how do I go and what role do I play? So like at We Are Wrestling, I do the play-by-play. So there's a different sound to how I do play-by-play versus in other companies that I do commentary for, I may be doing the color commentary. So how do I approach color commentary and play-by-play very differently?
Who's your favorite person you've done commentary with so far?
So my favorite long-term partner is the guy that I do commentary with at We Are Wrestling, Alphonse Stevens. You can also he also does commentary with me at Invictus Pro Wrestling. He also does commentary at Titan Championship Wrestling down in South Jersey and a couple of other places. I love working with Alphonse, and I think it's because him and I are such kindred spirits. We're both old school wrestling fans. Alphonse sounds like he got ripped out of the territories, like literally got ripped out of Memphis, got ripped out of the AWA, and is now doing commentary in 2023. But him and I are also big sports fans. So we also approach wrestling commentary from a very sports-centric presentation. I was always, so when I wanted to be a sports broadcaster, I always, because this face ain't made for television. This is a face made for radio, okay? And so I tell people all the time, like when I was really kind of on that path of wanting to do radio broadcasting, the one thing I always learned was they can't see what's happening. The people who are listening on the radio can't see the game. So they have to be able to close their eyes and hear what you're saying and see what's happening.
Right. Okay.
And so that's what I brought into wrestling. But you forget people can actually see what's happening in wrestling, right? Mm-hmm. So there was a shift, right? There had to be that shift. But me and Alphonse are the same way. It's like we're narrators. Mm-hmm. In terms of who's my favorite person to sit on the commentary with ever, oddly enough, MJF. I did commentary. Don't let AEW fool you. The first time MJF did commentary was not for AEW. It was sitting alongside me, and I have a picture to prove it, sitting alongside me doing color commentary at Bree Combination Wrestling, and we just had an absolute ball. Nice. We had an absolute ball doing commentary.
Dope.
Would he do heel color, I would imagine?
No, he was totally a baby. Yeah, no, right? he was heel color. No, he's about what you see on television with MJF is exactly who he is in real life.
Wow.
Legit. That is MJF.
Legit. All right, we got, like we mentioned before, we got the grand championship for We Are Wrestling being decided March 10th. There can only be one. So real quick, let's just talk a little bit about the tournament to determine who's going to be the champ, who's involved in it. Tell us about that.
So it is an 8-person tournament to determine the first ever We Are Wrestling Grand Champion. The original lineup, 7 of the competitors still remain from the original lineup. It was Darius Carter, Rob Killjoy, Anthony Gamble, Isaiah Wolf, Yaya, and Big Game Leroy. I believe I'm missing one person. The only person who's no longer a part of that is O'Shea Edwards. O'Shea Edwards was supposed to be part of this tournament. Unfortunately, had to pull out at the last minute. Oh, the person I'm missing is Dan Moff. O'Shea Edwards, unfortunately, could not partake in the tournament. So, Matt Awesome, who won the Rumble, sponsored by the Ringside Club at Welcome to the Bronx, winning means something at We Are Wrestling, right? Winning means something.
Matter. Look at that. Look at that.
And so, Matt Awesome got that open spot in the championship tournament and will be facing Rob Killjoy in the first round in that open spot. You know, Anthony Gamble, who's in this title tournament, winning matters, right? He was the winner of the first ever We Are Wrestling pre-show match. On the second show, he was in a scramble match on the main card. And ever since then, he's been a mainstay on all of our shows. In fact, having an absolute banger of a match against Lucas Chase at our last show. And, you know, he's in this title tournament. So it will be 4 first-round matchups to determine the semis, 2 matches in the semifinals to determine the finals, and the finals will be decided on the same night. 7 matches, 1 night to determine the first champion. They are broken up by the other 3 matches on our show that night. The 4-way tag team elimination match, the mixed tag match with AEW star Sky Blue, and Jarrett Diaz versus the yet-to-be-announced mixed tag team for them, as well as, and this is the big one, Janai Kai one-on-one against Trish Adora to determine who will become the first challenger for the We Are Wrestling Grand Champion. So we are not only crowning the champion that night, but when they are crowned, when they are given that We Are Wrestling Grand Championship, they will already know who that person looking over their shoulder is. It'll either be the Kick Demon Janai Kai or the Afro Punk and the current Pan-African Diaspora World Champion, Trish Adora.
Fire. Like, I cannot wait. Honestly, you hyped it up. If I wasn't already going to be there, yeah, that lineup sounds fire. Janai Kai had a fire match last time with Speedball Mike Bailey, by the way. So
incredible main event.
Incredible gang. We here. We here.
Trish Adora is on the up too.
Listen, she has been main event show number 1 against Darius Carter, defending that Pan-African World Championship. She had a banger of a match against O'Shea Edwards on show number 3. And now here we are, show 5, to determine the first number 1 contender. I mean, she has had some of the most brutal matches at We Are Wrestling. And it's, either one of these women could be a valid number 1 contender. And people asked, they were like, why weren't any of them put into the tournament? And I said, no. There's a method to the madness. I didn't put any of them in the tournament because I said the first challenger will be a woman. The first challenger will be a woman, because what I don't want is anybody saying, oh, you had one woman in a field of 7 men, and then the woman, no. The first challenger will unquestionably be a woman. And it will be one of those 8 men having to step into the ring against either the Kick Demon Janai Kai, who I guarantee you within the next year, if Janai Kai or Trish Adora are not signed to a contract to a major company in the calendar year of 2023, these companies are doing something wrong.
That's a fact.
Plain and simple.
That's a fact. All right, Pete, I appreciate you so very, very much being our first guest, inviting us back into your home on March 10th. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, as We Are Wrestling, there can only be one. You get your tickets at wearewrestling.eventbrite.com. Pete, let them know where they can find you, where they can find more information about We Are Wrestling, everything you got going on, your sports show, all of that.
Yes. You could find We Are Wrestling on Instagram at We Are Wrestling 1, on Twitter at wrestling_we, and also our Facebook right now. You can just find me on Facebook. Our old Facebook page is no longer valid. It was connected to my old social media that got hacked. So please do not follow the old We Are Wrestling page. I can't even post on that anymore. So we will be making a new Facebook page soon. You could follow me on Twitter only right now, at Pete Rosado 87. And then you can follow the Your Sports Show at Your Sports Show on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. Join the Your Sports Show discussion page, and we will be uploading content every week. In fact, check out Dre Big Baby dropping the new content this week, talking about the story on Ja Morant, talking about Daniel Jones, and everything in between.
Pete, appreciate you so very, very much. Give that man a round of applause. The mightiest. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ringside Club. Appreciate y'all.